There are journeys that span continents and journeys that span lifetimes. There are paths carved by armies and paths worn smooth by pilgrims. But perhaps no journey in human history has echoed through the ages quite like the one we explore today. Picture, if you will, the vast expanse of desert sand stretching endlessly toward distant mountains. Feel the weight of centuries pressing down upon these ancient paths, where countless feet have walked, where stories were born that would shape the faith of billions. This is the story of a people in motion, not just across the landscape of the ancient Near East, but across the landscape of the human soul. The Israelites' exodus from Egypt and their 40 years of wandering through the wilderness represents one of the most profound narratives of transformation in recorded history. It is a story of liberation and law, of divine encounter and human frailty, of a people forged not in the comfort of cities, but in the crucible of the desert. So before we begin our journey together, feel free to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy these gentle explorations of faith and history. And let me know in the comments what story of wandering or homecoming resonates with you. It's always wonderful to see how these ancient tales still speak to us today. Now, let's find a quiet space and step back some 3,500 years to walk alongside a people whose wandering would shape the world. Verse 1, Daily Life Immersion. Campfires and manna, life in the wilderness encampments. Dawn comes slowly to the wilderness. In those first moments before the sun crests the rocky horizon, when the air still carries the cool breath of night, you might have found yourself stirring within the confines of a goat hair tent, listening to the quiet sounds of an entire nation beginning to wake. The encampment stretches as far as the eye can see, not the chaotic sprawl of refugees, but something far more purposeful. There is order here, a sacred geometry to the arrangement of tents that speaks to divine instruction. At the center, rising like a jewel in the morning light, stands the Tabernacle, its white linen walls catching the first rays of sun. Around it, in concentric circles, the tribes of Israel arrange themselves according to ancient pattern. Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun to the east. Reuben, Simeon, and Gad to the south. Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin to the west. Dan, Asher, and Naphtali to the north. But this morning, like every morning for nearly 40 years, there is something else that captures the attention. As the dew begins to lift from the desert floor, it reveals something extraordinary. Small, round flakes, white like hoarfrost, covering the ground as far as the eye can see. The children are the first to notice, their voices carrying across the camp. What is it? What is it? Man-hu in their ancient tongue, the question that would give this mysterious bread its name, manna. Watch as families emerge from their tents, each carrying their omer, a small vessel, carefully measured to hold exactly what each person needs for the day. No more, no less. There is a profound lesson being taught here in the daily rhythm of provision and dependence. The gathering must be done before the heat of the sun melts this gift from heaven, and so the encampment comes alive with quiet purpose. The elderly move slowly but deliberately, their weathered hands steady as they collect their portion. Mothers help small children understand the boundary of their need. Enough for today, trust for tomorrow. Young men and women work together, a rhythm of gathering creating bonds that will last lifetimes. And always, always, there is the awareness that this is not merely food, but a daily reminder of divine provision, of the mysterious relationship between human need and heavenly grace. As the morning progresses and the manna is safely gathered, the other rhythms of wilderness life begin to unfold. Water must be found or rationed from the precious stores. The flocks of sheep and goats that have traveled with them since Egypt need tending. These animals are not just livestock, but walking larders, mobile wool factories, living symbols of prosperity that connect this wandering people to their patriarchal past. The tents themselves tell stories of adaptation and ingenuity. Made from the hair of the black goats of the region, they are perfectly suited to desert life. warm in the cool nights, providing shade in the blazing day, and waterproof when the rare desert rain falls. Inside, the floor is covered with woven mats, and the space is divided by hanging curtains into areas for sleeping, cooking, and storage. The few possessions each family has managed to bring from Egypt are carefully preserved. Perhaps a bronze mirror that catches the morning light, a carved wooden bowl passed down through generations, or a small seal stone bearing the mark of a family name. But beyond the practical necessities of survival, there are the rhythms of community and worship that make this encampment more than just a temporary settlement. 3 times each day, the sound of silver trumpets calls the people to attention, not for battle, but for the offering of sacrifices at the Tabernacle. The smoke rises straight up in the still desert air, carrying with it the prayers and offerings of a people learning what it means to be holy. The evening is perhaps the most sacred time. As the desert stars emerge in their countless multitudes, so many more than could ever be seen from the cities of Egypt, families gather around small fires to share their simple meal of manna cakes, perhaps supplemented with milk from their goats or, on rare occasions, meat from their flocks. The elders tell stories, their voices carrying across the quiet camp, stories of Abraham and the promise of land, of Isaac and the divine provision, of Jacob's wrestling with the angel, of Joseph's rise from slave to savior. Children who have known no other life than this wilderness existence listen with wide eyes, trying to imagine the cities their parents left behind, trying to picture the land of milk and honey that lies somewhere beyond the next ridge, beyond the next wadi, beyond the next day's march. For them, this nomadic existence is not exile, but education, a 40-year classroom where they are learning lessons that could be taught nowhere else. The night watches are kept by appointed guards, but in truth, the entire camp sleeps with one ear always listening. Not for human enemies, though they exist, but for the sound that has become the heartbeat of their wandering. The sound of the divine presence stirring the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night beginning to move, signaling that it is time once again to pack up their carefully ordered lives and follow the mystery deeper into the wilderness. And in those quiet hours before dawn, when the manna forms once again upon the desert floor like dew made edible, there is perhaps no sound more profound than the collective breathing of a people learning, day by day, step by step, to trust in something larger than themselves, to find home not in a place, but in a presence, not in walls of stone, but in the portable sanctuary of faith itself. This was their daily bread, quite literally, not just the manna that sustained their bodies, but the routine of dependence, the rhythm of provision, the daily choice to trust that today's needs would be met, and tomorrow's grace would be sufficient when tomorrow came. In the vastness of the wilderness, they were learning what it truly meant to be a people, and what it cost to follow a God who could not be contained within the familiar boundaries of nation or temple, but who traveled with them into the unknown. Verse 2. Biography, event narrative, Moses and the Mountain of Law. There are moments in history when the ordinary world seems to crack open, revealing something so profound that time itself seems to pause. The 3rd month after the exodus from Egypt brought one such moment, as the wandering Israelites found themselves camped at the foot of a mountain that would forever change the trajectory of human understanding of the divine. Mount Sinai rises from the wilderness like a sleeping giant, its granite peaks catching the first light of dawn and the last glow of evening. The mountain has many names: Sinai, Horeb, the mountain of God. But on this particular morning, as Moses prepared to ascend its rocky slopes, it was about to become something more, the place where heaven and earth would meet in thunderous conversation. Picture Moses in those early hours before his ascent. At 80 years old, his beard white as the manna that sustained his people, his staff worn smooth by decades of shepherding. First sheep in Midian, now an entire nation through the wilderness. His eyes, still clear despite his age, carry the weight of impossible responsibility. Behind him, spread across the plain, 600,000 men plus their families look to him for guidance, for answers, for the steady hand of leadership that has brought them this far. But Moses knows, in the deep places of his heart, that what is about to unfold on this mountain is beyond any human wisdom or strength. For 3 days, he has been preparing the people, washing their garments, consecrating themselves, setting boundaries around the mountain that none but he may cross. The air itself seems charged with anticipation, with the sense that something unprecedented is about to occur. As Moses begins his climb, the familiar sounds of the camp fade behind him. The bleating of goats, the voices of children, the crackle of morning fires, all grow distant as he moves higher into the thin air of the mountain. With each step, the ordinary world falls away, replaced by something altogether more mysterious. The rocks beneath his feet seem to vibrate with an energy he cannot name, and the silence becomes so complete it feels almost tangible. Halfway up the mountain, Moses pauses. Below him, the Israelite camp looks small against the vastness of the desert, a collection of tents and cooking fires that represents everything he has fought to preserve and protect. Above him, the peak of Sinai disappears into clouds that seem to pulse with their own inner light. This is the moment of choice, the step from the known into the unknowable. The higher Moses climbs, the more the boundary between the physical and spiritual world begins to blur. The very air seems to thicken, charged with a presence that makes his skin tingle and his heart race. And then, as he approaches the summit, the mountain itself begins to change. What starts as distant rumbling grows into something that shakes the very foundations of the earth. Lightning begins to flash from the clouds above, not the random lightning of a desert storm, but something far more purposeful, more directed. When Moses finally reaches the summit, he finds himself standing at the edge of eternity itself. The cloud that has led them through the wilderness is here, but transformed, no longer the gentle pillar of guidance, but a manifestation of power that defies description. Thunder rolls not just through the air, but through his very bones. The mountain beneath his feet trembles like a living thing, and smoke rises from its peak as if it were a great furnace. And then, in a moment that will echo through millennia, the voice of the Almighty speaks. It begins not with commandments, but with relationship. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. The voice carries the weight of all creation, yet it speaks with the intimacy of one who knows every step of their journey, every night spent in Egyptian bondage, every tear shed in the brick pits of Pharaoh's cities. What follows are not merely rules, but the very foundation stones of human civilization. 10 principles that will shape law and conscience for generations to come. As each commandment is spoken, Moses feels its weight settling not just in his mind, but in his soul. These are not arbitrary regulations, but revelations of the divine character itself, what it means to be holy, what it means to live in right relationship with the Creator and with one another. You shall have no other gods before me. The first commandment strikes at the heart of everything the Israelites have known. In Egypt, gods were everywhere. Gods of the Nile, gods of the harvest, gods carved from stone and wood. But here, on this mountain, they are being called to something radically different. Allegiance to an invisible God who cannot be contained in image or idol. You shall not make carved images. The second commandment challenges the very foundation of ancient religious practice. How do you worship what you cannot see? How do you relate to a God who refuses to be reduced to human artistry or imagination? You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. The third commandment speaks to the power of words themselves, the recognition that the divine name carries such weight that it must be handled with reverence, with care, with the understanding that some things are too sacred for casual use. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. The fourth commandment introduces a revolutionary concept, time set apart, not for productivity or achievement, but for rest, for reflection, for the acknowledgement that human beings are more than their labor. And then the focus shifts from the divine-human relationship to human relationships themselves. Honor your father and your mother. The fifth commandment establishes the family as the fundamental unit of society, the place where respect and reverence are first learned and practiced. You shall not murder. The sixth commandment declares the sacred value of human life, each person created in the image of God and therefore inviolable. You shall not commit adultery. The seventh commandment protects the sanctity of marriage, the covenant relationship that mirrors the divine human covenant itself. You shall not steal. The eighth commandment establishes the principle of property and the rights of others, the foundation of justice and fair dealing. You shall not bear false witness. The ninth commandment makes truth-telling a sacred obligation, recognizing that justice itself depends on the reliability of human testimony. You shall not covet. The 10th commandment reaches into the very heart of human motivation, addressing not just actions, but the desires that drive them. As each word is spoken, Moses realizes he is witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in human history. Not just a legal code, but a moral framework that acknowledges both the dignity of human beings and their accountability to something greater than themselves. The giving of the law takes 40 days and 40 nights, not because the commandments themselves require such time, but because Moses is being taught the deeper principles that will govern this new society. He learns about the Sabbath years and the year of Jubilee, about cities of refuge for the accused, about the treatment of foreigners and the poor. He receives instructions for worship, for sacrifice, for the ordering of community life in ways that reflect divine justice and mercy. But perhaps the most profound moment comes when Moses asks to see God's glory, to somehow glimpse the one who has spoken these words that will shape human history. The response is both a revelation and a reminder of human limitation. You cannot see my face and live. Instead, Moses is hidden in the cleft of a rock while the divine presence passes by, and he hears proclaimed the divine character itself. The Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. When Moses finally descends the mountain, carrying the stone tablets inscribed by the finger of God himself, his face shines with such radiance that the people cannot look upon him directly. He must cover his face with a veil, becoming himself a living symbol of the encounter between divine holiness and human frailty. The tablets he carries are not just legal documents, but the foundation charter of a new kind of society, one based not on the whims of pharaohs or the power of armies, but on principles of justice, mercy, and reverence for the sacred. They represent the possibility that human beings, created in the divine image, can live together in ways that reflect divine character, imperfectly, perhaps, but genuinely. As Moses stands before the assembled people, the tablets in his hands catch the desert sunlight like mirrors reflecting heaven itself. In his face, still glowing with the afterimage of divine encounter, they see not just their leader, but a living reminder that the distance between human and divine, while vast, is not unbridgeable. The mountain of law has become a bridge between worlds, and they, a people barely 3 months out of slavery, have been chosen to walk across it. The commandments given on Mount Sinai would outlast the mountain itself, outlast the wilderness wandering, outlast the kingdoms and empires that would rise and fall around them. They would become the bedrock of Western civilization, the foundation upon which concepts of human rights, individual dignity, and social justice would be built. But in this moment, they are simply 10 principles carved in stone, held in the weathered hands of an old shepherd who has seen the face of eternity and lived to tell the tale. Verse 3. Mystery, culture, technology, deep dive, tabernacle design, and divine geometry. In the quiet hours of dawn, when the desert camp still sleeps beneath its blanket of stars, there stands at the heart of the Israelite encampment a structure that defies every principle of nomadic simplicity. Rising from the sand like a vision made manifest, The tabernacle represents perhaps the most extraordinary architectural achievement of the ancient world, not for its size or permanence, but for its profound marriage of divine instruction and human craftsmanship. To understand the tabernacle is to glimpse something of the divine mind itself, a blueprint that emerged not from human imagination, but from direct heavenly instruction. See that you make them according to the pattern that was shown you on the mountain. Moses was told, and every cubit, every thread, every precious stone was specified with mathematical precision that speaks to deeper truths about the nature of worship, of holiness, and of the cosmos itself. Begin with the outer court, if you will, a rectangle precisely 100 cubits long and 50 cubits wide, enclosed by hangings of fine white linen suspended from pillars of bronze. This is not arbitrary dimensioning, but sacred geometry, the proportions reflecting the golden ratio that governs everything from the spiral of a seashell to the arrangement of galaxies. The very shape creates a sense of approach, a progression from the common to the sacred, from the everyday to the eternal. The hangings themselves tell a story in their construction. Made of fine twisted linen, not the rough cloth of every day, used but fabric beaten and spun to impossible smoothness. They shimmer in the desert sun like captured light. Each thread has been individually twisted, each weave carefully counted, creating a barrier that is both functional and symbolic. This is the boundary between the holy and the common, between the space where the divine presence dwells and the world of ordinary human existence. At the eastern end of this rectangle stands the altar of burnt offering, a massive structure of acacia wood overlaid with bronze. 5 cubits square and 3 cubits high, it dominates the eastern approach to the tabernacle proper. But notice the precision of its construction. The horns at each corner are not decorative additions, but integral to its function, shaped to hold the blood of sacrifice, designed to anchor the cords that bind the offerings. Even the bronze grating within speaks to careful engineering, allowing air to flow beneath the flames while catching the ashes that fall. Between the altar and the tabernacle proper stands the bronze laver, a basin of impossible beauty made from the polished bronze mirrors donated by the women of Israel. Here is transformation both literal and metaphorical. Objects of vanity reforged into instruments of purification. The priests must wash here before approaching the holy place, and the bronze surface, polished to mirror brightness, reflects not only their physical forms, but serves as a reminder of the inner, cleansing required for those who would serve in the presence of the divine. And then there is the tabernacle itself, the most extraordinary portable structure ever conceived. 30 cubits long, 10 cubits wide, and 10 cubits high, it achieves perfect proportional harmony. The framework is made of acacia wood, the only tree in the Sinai wilderness that grows large enough to provide the necessary boards, yet light enough to be carried by nomads. Each board is overlaid with gold, transforming the humble desert wood into something that catches and amplifies every ray of light. But the true genius lies in the system of connection. Each board is fitted with tenons, precisely carved projections that fit into silver sockets, each weighing a talent. The weight is not incidental. It provides stability while allowing for assembly and disassembly. The entire structure can be erected or taken down by the Levites in a matter of hours. Yet when standing, it possesses the solidity and permanence of a stone temple. A covering system reveals even deeper wisdom. 4 layers protect the sacred space within. Innermost, curtains of fine linen embroidered with cherubim in blue, purple, and scarlet. Then curtains of goat hair, waterproof and durable. Third, ram skins dyed red, providing additional protection. And finally, badger skins, tough outer covering that shields against the harsh desert environment. Each layer serves both practical and symbolic purposes. Beauty within, protection without, a gradual transition from the glory of the interior to the harsh reality of the wilderness. The interior space is divided by a veil of extraordinary craftsmanship. Fine linen worked with cherubim in blue, purple, and scarlet thread suspended from pillars of gold. This veil, 4 fingers thick according to tradition, separates the holy place from the most holy place, the realm where human priests may serve, from the space reserved for the divine presence alone. The cherubim woven into its fabric are not decorative but theological, guardians of the divine throne, reminders that access to the sacred requires both reverence and preparation. Within the holy place, 3 articles of furniture create a perfect triangle of worship. To the south stands the golden lampstand, the menorah, hammered from a single talent of pure gold. Its 7 branches are not mere decoration, but cosmic symbolism, representing the perfection of divine light, illuminating the darkness of the world. The cups, knops, and flowers beaten into its surface mirror the natural world, suggesting that all of creation is called to reflect divine glory. Opposite, to the north, stands the table of showbread, overlaid with gold and surrounded by a crown of gold. Upon it rest 12 loaves of bread, 1 for each tribe of Israel, replaced fresh each Sabbath in a cycle that speaks to the sustaining power of divine provision. The bread itself becomes a bridge between heaven and earth. Ordinary grain transformed into sacred offering, human labor offered back to its divine source. Before the veil stands the altar of incense, small but precious, its golden surface catching the light from the menorah. Morning and evening, the priest burns incense here, and the fragrant smoke rises through the tent, carrying with it the prayers of the people. The incense itself is compounded according to divine formula: stacte, aniha, galbanum, and frankincense, creating a fragrance found nowhere else on earth, reserved exclusively for this sacred purpose. But it is beyond the veil, in the most holy place, that the deepest mystery resides. Here stands the Ark of the Covenant, a chest of acacia wood overlaid with gold, containing the stone tablets of the law, Aaron's rod that budded, and a golden pot of manna. These are not mere artifacts, but concentrated symbols of divine revelation, divine authority, and divine provision. Above the ark, crafted from the same piece of gold as the covering, 2 cherubim face each other, their wings overshadowing what is called the mercy seat. This is the focal point of the entire structure, the place where heaven and earth meet, where the glory of the divine presence dwells between the wings of the cherubim. The space between their wings, empty of any physical object, becomes the most sacred spot in the known world, the place where the invisible God chooses to make his presence known. The mathematics of the structure reveal deeper truths. The holy place is twice as long as it is wide, creating perfect acoustic properties for the priestly prayers. The most holy place is a perfect cube, 10 cubits in each direction, its proportions echoing the New Jerusalem, described in prophetic vision. The heights, widths, and lengths work together to create spaces that feel both intimate and vast, human-scaled, yet touched with transcendence. Even the colors carry meaning beyond mere aesthetics. The blue, verse 4, contrasting perspective, overlooked world, the Canaanite lens, the arrival of a new people. The watchtower on the hill of Ai commands a view that stretches from the Jordan Valley to the coastal plain, from the mountains of Ephraim to the desert's edge. For generations, the guards who have kept vigil here have watched the same unchanging landscape. Terraced hillsides where olive trees grow silver green in the Mediterranean sun, valleys where barley and wheat ripen in their seasons, well-worn trade routes that connect the great civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia. But on this particular morning, as the mist lifts from the Jordan Valley, the watchman sees something that makes him rub his eyes in disbelief. A dust cloud rises on the eastern horizon, not the small cloud of a merchant caravan or the disciplined column of an Egyptian patrol, but something far larger, far more ominous. As the hours pass and the cloud draws nearer, individual shapes begin to resolve. Tens of thousands of people, vast herds of cattle and flocks of sheep, and at their center, something that catches the morning light like captured fire, a structure unlike anything in Canaanite experience. From the Canaanite perspective, what approaches is not liberation but invasion. not divine destiny, but human catastrophe. These are not their kinsmen returning home, but strangers claiming an inheritance that has never been theirs. The land they seek to possess has been cultivated for generations, its cities built by the labor of Canaanite hands, its terraces carved from rocky hillsides by ancestors whose bones rest in tombs cut into the limestone cliffs. In the city of Jericho, one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements in the world, the approach of the Israelites creates ripples of fear that spread through the narrow streets like floodwater. Jericho's walls have stood for centuries, their mud brick construction reinforced and heightened by successive generations. The city's location at the crossroads of major trade routes has brought prosperity. Egyptian gold, Mesopotamian silver, cedar wood from Lebanon, spices from Arabia. The houses within the walls are well built, some rising 2 and 3 stories, their courtyards filled with the bustle of craftsmen and merchants. But now, the merchants' conversations turn to darker matters. Reports filter in from the eastern desert, stories that strain credibility, yet come from too many sources to dismiss. An entire sea parted to allow these wanderers passage. Armies swallowed by closing waters. Victories against peoples who should have crushed such rabble without effort. And always, the reports speak of something that chills the Canaanite heart. This approaching horde claims divine sanction for their conquest, divine command to possess the land that others have called home for centuries. The religious implications disturb the Canaanite worldview even more than the military threat. In their understanding, the gods are local deities, bound to specific territories, their power confined to familiar borders. Baal controls the storms and fertility of Canaan. Ashtoreth governs love and war within her domain. Moloch demands his sacrifices in his appointed places. The idea of a deity who travels, who is not confined to sacred groves or temple precincts, who claims authority over all lands and peoples. This challenges everything they understand about the divine order. In the temple of Baal on Mount Carmel, the priests observe troubling omens. The sacred flames flicker when they should burn steady. The oil in the temple lamps congeals despite the warmth of the season. The doves released for divination circle 3 times instead of flying straight. And when they finally depart, they head not toward Phoenicia as expected, but toward the desert, toward the approaching multitude. The Canaanite understanding of land ownership differs fundamentally from that of the approaching Israelites. For them, the land belongs to those who work it, who have invested their lives in its cultivation, who have built its cities and carved its terraces. Their ancestors are buried in its soil. Their children have been born within its borders. Their gods have been worshipped at its high places for generations beyond counting. The claim of these desert wanderers, that their deity has granted them this territory as an eternal inheritance, seems not only presumptuous, but sacrilegious. From the walls of Jerusalem, still called Jebus by its inhabitants, King Adoni-Zedek watches the approaching crisis with the calculating mind of one who has survived decades of political turmoil. Jerusalem's position on the ridge between the Mediterranean and the Dead Sea makes it a natural fortress, but more importantly, it serves as the spiritual heart of Canaanite resistance to foreign domination. The city's temples honor not only the local deities, but serve as a symbol of cultural continuity stretching back to the dawn of memory. The king's advisors bring in reports that seem to blend military intelligence with religious apocalypse. The approaching Israelites carry with them a portable sanctuary that burns with inner fire. Their leader bears stone tablets inscribed not by human hand, but by divine finger. They march not in the chaotic manner of nomadic raiders, but with the precision of an army guided by supernatural intelligence. Most disturbing of all, cities that should have resisted their advance have fallen with barely a struggle, their walls collapsing as if shaken by invisible hands. In the markets of Gaza, where Philistine merchants trade goods from across the known world, the approaching threat creates economic as well as existential anxiety. The trade routes that have enriched these coastal cities depend on stability, unpredictable relationships between established powers. The arrival of a new people, claiming divine mandate to reshape the political landscape, threatens not just individual livelihoods, but the entire commercial framework that connects Africa, Asia, and Europe. The Philistines, themselves relatively recent arrivals from the Aegean world, understand the dynamics of conquest and settlement, but their expansion was driven by recognizable motives: population pressure, the search for fertile land, the collapse of established kingdoms, creating power vacuums to be filled. The Israelite invasion seems motivated by something far more troubling: religious conviction that admits no compromise, divine command that recognizes no competing claims. From their hilltop settlements, Canaanite farmers watch the approaching host with the particular dread of those who know their way of life hangs in the balance. Their agricultural techniques have been perfected over generations: the careful terracing that captures precious rainfall, the rotation of crops that maintain soil fertility, the mixed farming that combines grain cultivation with olive and grape production. This is not just economic activity, but cultural identity, the foundation upon which Canaanite civilization rests. The approaching Israelites, by contrast, carry the mobility of the desert, but lack the agricultural expertise of settled peoples. Their 40 years of wandering have taught them to depend on divine provision rather than human cultivation. From the Canaanite perspective, this makes them not just conquerors, but destroyers. People who will inherit what they cannot maintain, who will possess what they do not understand. The women of Canaan feel the approaching crisis with particular intensity. Canaanite society offers them roles and status that, while not equal to men, provide significant autonomy and influence. The goddess Ashtoreth, patroness of love and fertility, validates feminine power in ways that make Canaanite women active participants in religious and social life. The reports filtering back about Israelite customs suggest a more restrictive understanding of women's roles. A religious system dominated entirely by male priesthood serving a deity conceived in masculine terms. As the Israelite host draws nearer to the inhabited areas of Canaan, individual Canaanites face impossible choices. Some, like Rahab in Jericho, read the signs of the times and choose to cast their lot with the invaders, believing that resistance is futile and survival requires accommodation. Others prepare for siege, trusting in walls that have protected their ancestors and gods who have blessed their harvests for centuries. But perhaps the most poignant perspective belongs to the Canaanite elders, the keepers of oral tradition, who understand that more than territory is at stake. They have preserved stories stretching back to the foundations of their cities, genealogies that connect present families to ancient heroes, religious practices that maintain the cosmic order through proper sacrifice and ritual observance. The approaching Israelites represent not just political conquest, but cultural extinction, the replacement of one worldview with another, the silencing of voices that have spoken for millennia. In the sacred groves where Canaanite priests have maintained unbroken traditions of worship, the approaching crisis takes on cosmic dimensions. These are not merely local gods facing foreign deities, but competing understandings of reality itself. The Canaanite worldview sees divinity as multiple, localized, manageable through proper ritual and sacrifice. The Israelite conception of a single, universal deity who claims exclusive loyalty and demands the destruction of all competing religious systems represents not just conquest, but cosmological revolution. As night falls across the land of Canaan, from Dan to Beersheba, from the Great Sea to the Jordan Valley, families gather around their hearth fires, knowing that their world stands on the brink of irreversible change. Children who have played in streets their grandparents built may grow to maturity under foreign rule. Languages that have echoed through these valleys for generations may fall silent. Gods who have received worship since the foundations of the world may find their temples empty, their altars cold. Yet even in this approaching darkness, there is a recognition among the more thoughtful Canaanites that history moves in tides too large for any one people to control. The great civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia have risen and fallen within living memory. The sea peoples have swept across the Mediterranean, reshaping the political landscape. Perhaps the arrival of these desert wanderers is simply the next turn of the wheel, the latest chapter in the endless story of people seeking homes, gods seeking worshipers, destinies seeking fulfillment. From their hilltops and watchtowers, from their city walls and temple courts, the Canaanites watched the dust cloud of history approaching, carrying with it not just an army, but an entirely new understanding of what it means to be human, to be holy, to belong to the land and to the divine. They cannot know that this encounter will reshape not just their immediate world, but the spiritual landscape of humanity itself, that from this collision of peoples and worldviews will emerge concepts of justice, mercy, and divine purpose that will echo through millennia to come. In the end, the Canaanite perspective reminds us that history is written by more than victors. It is lived by all who find themselves caught in its currents, shaped by all who must choose how to respond when the foundations of their world begin to shift, honored by all who face the future with whatever courage and wisdom they can summon, knowing that they are participants in a story far larger than their individual lives, yet depending utterly upon their individual choices. Conclusion. As we come to the end of our journey through the wilderness with the children of Israel, perhaps what strikes us most profoundly is not the destination, but the transformation that occurred along the way. In 40 years of wandering, a collection of Hebrew slaves became a nation with its own law, its own worship, its own understanding of divine purpose. They entered the desert as refugees. They emerged as pilgrims, carrying the seeds of a faith that would reshape the world. We have walked with them through their daily struggles, the morning gathering of manna, the evening telling of stories around desert fires, the constant rhythm of packing and unpacking their portable lives as they followed the mysterious cloud that guided their steps. We have stood with Moses on the heights of Sinai, feeling the mountain shake beneath our feet as heaven and earth met in thunderous conversation, receiving words that would become the foundation of human law and conscience. We have marveled at the precision and beauty of the Tabernacle, that extraordinary portable sanctuary where divine geometry met human craftsmanship, where the infinite chose to dwell among the finite. And we have glimpsed the world through Canaanite eyes, understanding that every story of homecoming is simultaneously someone else's story of displacement, that history's currents carry all of us, whether we choose their direction or not. But perhaps the deepest lesson of this ancient journey is that some destinations can only be reached by wandering. Some truths can only be learned in the wilderness. Some transformations require not the comfort of settled life, but the discipline of following, a pillar of cloud and fire into the unknown. The Israelites could not have become who they were meant to be if they had traveled directly from Egypt to the Promised Land. The 40 years were not punishment, but preparation, not delay, but formation. Their story continues to speak to us because we all, in our own ways, are wanderers. We all carry within us the longing for home, the search for meaning, the need to understand our place in the vast mystery of existence. We all must learn to trust in provision we cannot control, to follow guidance we cannot fully understand, to build our lives around promises whose fulfillment we may not live to see. The dust has long since settled on the paths they walked. The desert winds have erased their footprints from the sand, but their journey continues in every person who chooses faith over certainty, hope over despair, the unknown future over the familiar past. Their pilgrimage becomes ours each time we decide to trust that there is meaning in the wandering, purpose in the wilderness, and grace sufficient for each day's needs. Thank you for walking with us through these ancient paths, for lending your imagination to these timeless stories, for allowing these voices from the deep past to speak into your present moment. If this journey has touched something in your heart, we'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And if you'd like to continue exploring these intersections of faith and history, consider subscribing for more gentle journeys through the landscapes of the human spirit. Until we meet again on another path, in another story, may you find in your own wandering the same grace that sustained our ancestors in theirs. Provision for today, guidance for tomorrow, and the quiet assurance that even in the wilderness, especially in the wilderness, we are not alone.